Are you keeping track of Everskies' situation? Please log into your Everskies account and read the DMs you got. Please include the end message of Helmy, document of none, BLM donation expose of waffles, secret presence of Tut, and everything else you can find. They're all ex-staff members. Can you cover the Everskies drama, the racism, bad staff, parrot controversy, solitude, Tut, etc.? I'm one of the devs on a new, better Everskies game called Ourverse, and I have a lot of experience with the drama. I would be glad to provide details. I was involved with several of the main controversies. Yes, I am aware of the Everskies dramas and controversies, and I've been kind of just watching from a distance as all of these things unfold. If you're one of the people who sent me these messages, I regret to inform you that this video probably isn't going to go the way you want it to go. I would like to talk today about the architecture of drama on Everskies, why we see these controversies pop up, how the Everskies staff can respond to them, and what it tells us about the user base that these controversies are happening. I will not be taking a stance on the particular controversies, but instead talking about the nature of the controversies. Let's set the foundation of what I want to talk about today. There's this scenario where when new users are on the internet in an unfettered amount and there's a new stream, endless stream of them, there seems to be storming, forming, and norming, which is they don't know the etiquette, they learn the etiquette, and then they become normal, but it disrupts everybody else on the internet. The first documented case of this would be Eternal September, which is what happened in September of 1993 when AOL opened Usenet registration to a greater population of users. Before September 1993, it was mostly accessed by university students, higher education, and there would be an influx of new users at the beginning of the school year. They would learn the etiquette, and then they would normalize to the standard of behavior expected on Usenet. This Eternal September is what we're living in now. There are constantly new members joining the internet, and they don't know the correct way to behave, and we just have to deal with it all the time now. Years later, I'm on Reddit. And I come to understand that during the summer, posts just suck. Reddit just sucks during the summer because there's all of these high school students, college students that usually aren't on Reddit. So they don't know the jokes, they don't know everything that's established. They just show up and they ruin Reddit. And there's a phrase for this, it's called summer Reddit. Over time, I realized that summer Reddit doesn't end, because those high schoolers, those college students that had reduced access to the internet because they were in class during the day, suddenly have access to Reddit during the day while they're in school. Through smartphones or laptops, they're always online. So summer Reddit doesn't end. Both of those instances were new users joining a populace online and bothering the current populace. In one of those instances, I was a member of that. So Everskies was a new game. How does this relate to that? In March of 2020, globally, every student was sent home and pretty much all schools decided we're going to do virtual from now on. How does this apply in this instance? We don't really have a before for Everskies to be like, this was the norm before. The norm was very small. It was a very small group of people, so we don't really get the opportunity to say, this is the eternal March 2020. But I do believe that we're going to see those effects long term because suddenly we had teenagers pulled out from the environment where they would traditionally build themselves. They would build their personalities through the standard techniques that teenagers build their personalities. Rebelling against the leadership, that's the principal, that's their student guidance officer, their safety officer, their teacher. They're doing it through their clothing, they're doing it through their relationships, how they describe themselves. And now instead of having the outlet to do it in a space that is developed for that, that has the resources for it, that has trained professionals that go through higher education to develop skills to work with young adults through that process, they are now online all the time in an instance that their schools have not necessarily been developed for. So they're seeking the outlet in digitally mediated outlets like EversSkies. EversSkies was not built to be a replacement for every type of socialization that a teenager could have. They don't have the resources. They don't have higher education. There's no standard to judge the moderators. However, I believe what we will find in time through research is that teenagers and young adults, I would say this goes up to people in their very early 20s who naturally would have a further definition of themselves being developed in those early years of college, now have to do this all online. Many of these people, now that they've been introduced to primarily socializing online, may not recover and go back to primarily physical interactions. I believe that we will see an eternal March 2020. At this part of the video, I'm going to go into some of the details of accusations and dramas and the way they're built. What I want you to pay attention to is like the medium of the drama, who's making the accusations, what the accusations are, if there's somebody who's harmed by it, do they accept the apology, how is the apology presented, is there an apology, what is the response from the community. These are the things that when I'm making this video, I want you to think about, right? It's not just about what happened, it's about how we talk about what happened, who talks about what happened, who has the power, how is that power used, how is it abused. Not so much the specifics of the dramas, right? A drama happens one time, but every time we retell it, it happens a different way. And that's what this video is kind of about. I'm wearing a different color shirt to denote that this is the post-demonetization edit of the video. In this part of the video, I go into a drama that features Tut, who is a co-owner of EversSkies. There is a leadership team made of two, Tut and Parrot. I believe they are about 27 years old. They are boyfriend and girlfriend. Parrot is the lead developer, and Tut is acting as the art director, the art lead, creative director, however you'd like to call it. The management of the website falls on their shoulders. Without their collaboration, the website would not exist. EversSkies was created by Parrot in response to Tut's interest in games like Go Supermodel and Virtual Pop Star. The drama that I'm featuring is an instance where Tut made jokes using a four-letter word starting with the letter R that represents a particularly heinous act of intimate violence. It's a pretty common word in the English language. If you go online, it's used in distasteful humor, and I will be censoring it to freep because there's no way to talk about this drama without referring to the word itself. I will be blurring it on screen as well. In this Google Slides deck entitled Tut and Her Unfunny Freep Jokes, there are two instances where Tut used the concept of freep as a punchline to a one-off joke. The first event happened in 2019 and the second 2020. For the sake of following the chronology of this slides, we're going to start with the event that happened in 2020. In 2020, Tut posted on the Discord. A Discord is like a chat room online. Give me that tack and I freep everybody. To which Parrot, her boyfriend, responded dancing shark emoji. Then it came out that in 2019, Tut had made similar comments about freep. This user, Bruhe, said, "True, most e-girls don't want to get freeped." To which Tut responded, "That's so hot, OMG, can I watch the intimate acts, please?" And then Bruhe said, "Of course." In a previous video, I covered a situation on EversSkies where a mod was called out for some disparaging remarks they made about the xenogender community. After that event happened, Tut released an apology, and the EversSkies team said that the user who made disparaging jokes about freep, intimate violence, is blocked because they do not condone jokes about that sort of violence at all. After the Discord comments in this Google Docs went live showing Tut making these jokes, Tut was called on about it, and she made a formal apology on the EversSkies forums saying that, English is her second language, and that in the environment that she learned English, freep was a punchline, it's something that you joke about, and it doesn't have that intimate violence connotation, and that she learned that only after having made those jokes. It's up to you whether or not this is verifiable. I know in my personal experience when I was, a late teenager playing World of Warcraft with my friends, I was the stick in the mud saying, like, don't make freak jokes around me. And they're just like, wow, you're so sensitive. Why are you so sensitive? And to me, it is a plausible explanation if it's a second language that you mostly use in a gaming environment. Following Tut's apology published to the Everskies forums, the moderator team locked the thread so there cannot be further discussion on the thread. This slides deck paints that act as an act of cowardice. This particular drama is chronicled in several of these Google Slides documents, and this is the language of sharing and describing and discussing these dramas. This is how they circulate. Basically, it's just screenshots, and sometimes they're a block of text explaining what's going on in the screenshots, but quite frequently it relies on the reader having a basic level or an in-depth level of understanding of who all these characters are and how they all relate to one another and what power they have in the Everskies community. One of the comments I read at the beginning of this video was about the secret presence of Tut. Following the apology and the backlash of the apology, Tut deleted her account or stopped using her account, but remained very active in the development of EversSkies because I mentioned before, she is an integral, required part of EversSkies. She and Parrot are the owners. They're the creators. Without them, there is no game. And people seem to take offense to the fact that she is still involved with the project, when in reality, the project would not exist without Tut. I brought up the whole socialization of teenagers is happening online thing before mentioning this drama, and I very much don't want to pick sides in this drama. I think that what it comes down to is that Tut seems to now be apologetic for the jokes that she made, but the user base is unwilling to accept that apology. Teenagers rebel against any authority figure that they see as being amoral or unethical. Part of personality forming is rebellion, but also virtue signaling and fighting against injustice. And this has been deemed that by the user base on EversSkies. This is an intolerable behavior. What is Tut supposed to do now that she's apologized for these jokes and the apologies weren't accepted? How is she supposed to continue being on the game? How is the game supposed to get developed? It doesn't seem clear to me that there is a path, or that the collective holding her accountable is seeing the broad picture. It feels a lot from an outsider perspective. The student body is rebelling against the principal for something that the principal said, which was wrong, and the principal not admitted that it was wrong. But the difference between a principal and a game developer is that a principal hangs out in the teacher's lounge with the teachers. They don't go to the cafeteria and eat with the students. And that's very much what it looks like Tut and Parrot and all the developers have been doing. Instead of maintaining a professional distance from the students, they're instead acting like peers and entrenching themselves in the drama of the peer group and opening themselves up to the criticism and behaviors of teenagers. I'm not saying that these things don't matter because teenagers are just rebelling. It absolutely matters. It absolutely matters that we don't take lightly LGBTQA issues or racism. These things absolutely matter. But I'm trying to bring up is the fact that institutions that are developed with the well-being of teenagers and an institutional knowledge of how to support developing minds is being substituted for digitally mediated spaces that have little to no support or understanding of what a high school teacher understands or knows. And regardless of what you think of your high school, your guidance counselors, the teachers that you had, I would argue they have infinitely more knowledge and understanding of how to deal with teenager specific issues, that rebellion, that personality forming, that clique development, that interpersonal conflict, the influx of hormones, trying to understand who you are, than two 27-year-olds developing a doll dress-up game. I use the Tut example because it is so similar to all of the other dramas that have been mentioned. It's more coherent than the others, it's easier to explain, but we also have solitude and blackfishing, which is the concept that users using avatars beyond their skin tone need to consider why they're doing that, especially in a digital mediated forum like Everskies, where all of your forum posts are accompanied by that avatar, and that avatar is in a sort of way lending credibility to your comments. At first, I didn't really see very much to do with this. I didn't really understand the threat or the frustration related to blackfishing, and neither did Solitude. But as Solitude was called out for it and dragged about it, she did come to realize that, hey, this is actually not cool, and she educated herself and she got over it. But what I also learned is that Solitude had tons of drama on Virtual Popstar. This is just a person who's very online. And when you're very online and negotiating your personal development in an online space, you're going to have a lot of drama. That's why this topic is so big and so hard to cover, because everyone's saying, Julie, what do you think about the Everskies drama? And what I think is that when you have people defining who they are through their online interactions, drama is the byproduct. You asking me about drama on Everskies is like asking me about heat in the kitchen. Yes, there's going to be heat in the kitchen. If you can't stand the heat, then maybe you shouldn't be in the kitchen. But if there are no in-person schools, and for the first time 16 and 18-year-olds are socializing primarily online, then maybe they are going to rebel within reason for reasonable reasons against the public authority figures that are presented to them. Maybe it lends itself to drama. It's really hard for me to discuss because I don't necessarily think that the particular dramas are unique. When you compare them to each other, they're made of the same things. And more importantly, I feel like there's a vocal minority saying, hey, this is a big issue. Well, at any given time, there are about 6,000 Everskies users who are just like, I'm here to dress up dolls. And then we get the phenomenon of people saying, you know what, Everskies is so toxic, the people running it they're just so toxic, we're gonna make our own game, Ourverse. And then I check Urban Dictionary for Ourverse, and it is not even a game yet and never will be. The people running it are problematic and ignorant. They kicked half of their mods, and they claim to be better than Everskies when favoritism is all they know. Ourverse is not a thing. The Ourverse service got deleted. Good. This definition is from March 21st, 2021. And I'm bringing this up because I don't think that the problem necessarily is the people. I don't think that Parrot and Tut are the problem. And you might be saying to yourself, Julie, you're not even covering all the dramas, everything that Parrot's done, everything that everybody else has done. And it's like, okay, you're right, I'm not covering that. I'm really not. Because every time I'm asked about a specific drama, I'm presented with the facts, but never the apology. And when I read the apology, I say to myself, well, that's reasonable. Oh, look, there are the receipts. Well, look, they donated to the organization they said they were going to donate to. And they seem to understand the implications of what they did. And they want to make things better, but it's hard to do when you're running an organization and you have no experience doing it before. And because it's hard to do everything right when you're doing something you've never done before, starting a new game like Our Verse isn't necessarily the solution. I think that the problems are endemic to the player base. I think the problems are endemic to the fact that the people wanting to create solutions are part of the peer group and do not separate themselves from the peer group when they try to author solutions. Professionalism is a gift that you give the people around you. In the Neopets community, there's a lot of frustration about the fact that the Neopets team does not communicate with the player base. And yes, that is a frustration. You want to know what's going on. You want to know who's involved in the solution, what is being prioritized. But it is a gift to the player base, and it is a gift to the developers to not commingle, to not be so close. Because when professionalism slips, that's when you get gross abuses of power. There's no reason why your chat log should be accessible to players. It causes more problems than it solves. I just don't see the solution being bred from the group where the problem arises. While we're on the topic of Neopets, there's something that I want to touch on, which is like a strength to Neopets that a lot of people, I think, see as a weakness. So it is a long-standing rule on Neopets that you cannot discuss politics. They recently relented their stance on LGBTQA topics, so you can talk a bit more about your identity, but frankly, you're not supposed to debate specific beliefs. And I say that this is a strength of Neopets because these platforms aren't really built to mediate that sort of very fraught discourse. When you're making debates about something like personhood or religious beliefs, they become very complicated very quickly, right? This is why you're not really supposed to talk about them on first dates unless it's like a filter for you, in which case you should, because you're likely going to filter a lot of people out. It's like why that's not professional conversation, because it's going to hurt professional relationships, most likely, okay? EversSkies does not have extensive tools to have discussions about race or trans rights. However, the user base sees that silencing of topics related to race and trans rights as being racist and transphobic. In response to being called racist and transphobic or against neurodivergent persons, Everskies allows some conversation of these topics. But it is inevitable that some conversation of these topics leads to arguments and conflict on these topics. Because Everskies does not have a moral code or virtue code explicitly written out on the website, it is possible for an ally or for someone who cares deeply about LGBTQA rights or race issues or the equal treatment of neurodivergent folks to be labeled as a racist or a bigot because they're not using the right language, because they haven't come to terms with concepts in the right way yet. It's possible that these people are doing the work and are open to learning. However, this isn't the right format to bring those topics home. And it's so easy for one post on one thread to get taken out of context, and before somebody can clarify in the next post that their stance is different from what is interpreted from the post the way it was initially written, to be branded and banned and blocked as a racist or a bigot. So it almost feels like Everskies needs to release stances on every single social issue that if you do not align perfectly with this stance, you will be treated as a bigot, which is in of itself just an incredibly difficult undertaking. And it's like, dude, why do you allow these conversations at all? Like, there's not very much tolerance online for diversity of thought around these topics, but you can have allies who, in theory and in practice support a stance 100% who word things incorrectly or who just haven't come to deal with a topic or been presented with the right thoughts about a topic yet, that get stepped on and left out of the conversation and branded as bigots because they don't know yet, which is a good reason to just not allow those topics at all. Okay, you know what? We're going to do a tonal shift here because there is something that I want to hold Parrot and Tut accountable for, and it's kind of mentioned like in a cursory way when one of the dramas with an artist named Helmi, who is not fairly compensated for their work. And I feel like this video is giving a lot of buys and a lot of space to Parrot and Tut to be problematic. But there's something that I think is really insidious about this space that I've talked about in every video that I've made about EversSkies, and that is compensating artists for their work, because this game exists because of work donated by artists. And there seems to be an admission on Parrot's end that they're struggling to figure out how to compensate artists in a fair way, especially when minors are contributing artwork. And my contribution to this is that it's not rocket science. If there is not an ethical way to compensate minors for their work, do not accept work from minors. It really doesn't seem to be that hard to me. I don't understand how it's 2021, we've experienced virtual pop star, and yet EversSkies is still having this problem of how do I compensate artists fairly? You don't accept art you can't pay for, and you don't accept art from minors. But they want to contribute art. I don't care. Minors want to do all sort of stuff. That doesn't mean they get to do it. It's unethical. It's wrong. Don't do it. Don't do it anymore. Don't think about doing it. And don't do it. Like, this is my big grievance. It's just like, why are you doing this? If you cannot pay for art, if you haven't worked out a system, then you don't get the art. This game exists because of labor. If you cannot pay for that labor, do not accept the work. Do not publish it. If you can't compensate minors, then don't accept work from minors. This makes me so crazy, and I hate this. And if EversSkies doesn't figure this out, then I'm gonna be like done with EversSkies in the same way that I'm done with Virtual Popstar. It's so frustrating to me to see that this is something that's even discussed on like a we're trying to figure it out level. It's like, it's not rocket science. If you can't do it, then don't do it. Hi, welcome to the end of the video. I had a separate outro recorded previously, but yesterday I uploaded this video and YouTube demonetized it, turned off comments, and restricted it to 18+. So I went through, and this is what I'm calling the director's cut, less spicy version of the video, where I made a bunch of changes. So I thought I would jump on here and talk about some of those changes. It was kind of like a hidden blessing that I had the opportunity thrown upon me to make changes to this video, because I do believe that I cut out a lot of riffraff that was in the video, and I was able to accurately summarize a little bit and cut out some minutes that are just like me talking very slowly. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. I was really afraid to release it. There was like a 20-day gap where I didn't work on it at all. That's not the longest gap in a video that I've worked on. There's a video sitting in my edit folder that I started in July of last year, of 2020, so who knows when that'll happen. I just hit 12,500 subscribers the other day, and I am having a Q&A, so leave those comments below. I think I am going to demonetize this video. I'm not going to monetize it, just to kind of protect myself from that getting stricken. So if you enjoyed this video, please go watch another video of mine, because I'm not going to get paid from this video, which is fine. It's not necessarily about getting paid as much as it is talking about issues that are important to me, and this is an important issue to me.